May God be with you.
And also with you.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus spoke this parable, addressed to those who believed in their own self-righteousness, while holding everyone else in contempt. Two people went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed like this: I give you thanks, O God, that I am not like the others, greedy, crooked, adulterous, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes on everything I earn. The other one, however, kept a distance, not even daring to look up to heaven. In real humility, all the tax collector said was, O God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Believe me, the tax collector went home from the temple right with God, where the Pharisee did not. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, while those who humble themselves will be exalted. The good news of salvation. Congratulations, Dignity New York. Happy 50th anniversary. 50 years. As we continue the celebration of your Golden Jubilee with Liturgy, having shared dinner last night, it seems fitting that we gather around a different table, the table this evening. After all, as I'm sure you have heard many times, Eucharist means Thanksgiving. And when I think about your community and these last 5 decades, we have so much to be thankful for. In Celtic tradition, there is the concept of thin places. Thin places are locations or moments in which our sense of the sacred is more pronounced, where the space between heaven and earth is exceptionally narrow. This is only the second time I've had the privilege of joining your community for liturgy in person, but your liturgies have long been a thin place for me, a lifeline of connection to our God and this sacred community during all those long pandemic months of isolation and social distancing. I think all of us gathered here today, those in person, online from around the country and the world, and the communion of saints who join us from heaven. All those who have been touched by your work, your community, and your ministry would agree. Dignity New York is a thin place. a holy place where we are known and loved by each other and by our God. This week's readings focus on God's mercy for the poor. We hear themes of humility and trust in God. And at first blush, there didn't seem to be an obvious connection to your Golden Jubilee, until I looked at the readings more closely and thought more about the history of your community. Because friends, the more I reflected on our readings today, the more I was reminded, God works through people. God works through us, and God has been working through this community. St. Teresa of Avila wrote, "Christ has no body but yours, no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks compassion on this world. Yours are the feet which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world." And so when we hear in Sirach, God listens to the prayers of those who are exploited. God will never ignore the pleas of the orphans or the widows as they pour out their hearts. I think about the richness here and the way this community has been the hands and feet of Christ, reaching out to those who are hurting or who find themselves on the margins. Your own website proclaims, Dignity New York considers pastoral care an integral part of our gospel ministry. Within the Catholic tradition, Dignity is committed to the pastoral care of our members, their families, and friends. We are committed to pastorally ministering to the elderly, the homebound, the physically and emotionally wounded, as well as those grieving the death of a loved one or the breakup of a relationship. Dignity New York ministers in a special way to those living with HIV/AIDS. We actively participate in AIDS Walk New York to support gay men's health crisis and its outreach to people infected and affected by the virus. I'm reminded, friends, of your early leadership and advocacy in caregiving during the AIDS crisis. Many members of your community were also active with ACT UP and participated in the demonstrations and die-ins at St. Patrick's Cathedral and beyond. As the home of John McNeil, your community also had a special role in supporting John through his groundbreaking writings and publications, his marginalization and silencing, and then his reemergence during the AIDS crisis. In the second reading, Paul speaks to feeling abandoned by those around him, but that God stood up for him. How many times have we as queer people felt abandoned by the world? How many of us have lost family and friends after coming out, only to find a home and a family with Dignity New York? You have been the hands of Christ as you embrace new members, stand up for them, love them, and welcome them into this family. For those who were at dinner last night, you've already heard this, but I said last night that 50 years ago when Dignity New York began, I was not yet alive. In fact, my parents had not even met yet. And that means that for me and for many who gathered last night for dinner, who gather in this church today, we have never known a world without Dignity New York. When we were ready to come out, you were already here with your arms open, waiting to embrace us. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Throughout your 50-year history, you have continually been leaders in creating community. In the 1970s, New York Pride was a gathering point for many Dignity chapters. Your hosting and hospitality not only created a supportive community here, but helped to build our national movement. And your celebration of Stonewall 25 again created a national gathering place for a supportive Dignity community to gather and blossom. You've all been pioneers, modeling broadly inclusive liturgy and building community beyond the walls of this church or the geography of this city. First with Come to the Table, and then again with the virtual liturgies during COVID that continue to this day. If Dignity USA has a national liturgical community, it is this liturgy and this community, where we found a space for prayer and connection, a place where new friendships and new relationships were born. And what to make of this gospel? Jesus tells the parable of two people who went into the temple to pray, a Pharisee and a tax collector. The Pharisee is self-righteous and self-aggrandizing, while the tax collector approaches God with humility. Believe me, Jesus says, the tax collector went home from the temple right with whereas the Pharisee did not. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, while those who humble themselves will be exalted. Dictionary definitions and popular understandings of humility emphasize low self-regard and a sense of unworthiness as characteristics. But friends, that's not true humility. True humility is knowing exactly who we are and owning and celebrating that without indulging in either haughtiness or self-deprecation. And by that definition, our celebrations of pride are expressions of humility. Because again, to quote your own website, Dignity New York is a place where we can celebrate fully as we are. All are welcome, all are accepted, all are wanted, all are loved. Dignity New York, you are the hands and heart of Christ as you embrace and love as God loves. And so friends, as you celebrate these last 50 years, please know that your whole Dignity family celebrates with you. And as you look ahead to the next 50, I pray that you'll continue to be the hands, the feet, the voice, the body, and the heart of Christ in the world.
Amen.